for so long as she sat in the same room as her mother, Mrs. Hilbery might, at any moment, ask for a sight of the post. A very hasty glance through many sheets had shown Katharine that, by some coincidence, her attention had to be directed to many different anxieties simultaneously. In the first place, Rodney had written a very full account of his state of mind, which was illustrated by a sonnet, and he demanded a reconsideration of their position, which agitated Katharine more than she liked. Then there were 2 letters which had to be laid side by side and compared before she could make out the truth of their story, and even when she knew the facts, she could not decide what to make of them. And finally, she had to reflect upon a great many pages from a cousin who found himself in financial difficulties, which forced him to the uncongenial occupation of teaching the young ladies of Bungay to play upon the violin. But the 2 letters, which each told the same story differently, were the chief source of her perplexity. She was really rather shocked to find it definitely established that her own second cousin, Cyril Allardyce, had lived for the last 4 years with a woman who was not his wife, who had borne him 2 children, and was now about to bear him another. This state of things had been discovered by Mrs. Milvain, her Aunt Celia, a zealous inquirer into such matters, whose letter was also under consideration. Cyril, she said, must be made to marry the woman at once, and Cyril, rightly or wrongly, was indignant with such interference with his affairs, and would not own that he had any cause to be ashamed of himself. Had he any cause to be ashamed of himself, Katharine wondered, and she turned to her aunt again. "Remember," she wrote in her profuse, emphatic statement, "that he bears your grandfather's name, and so will the child that is to be born. The poor boy is not so much to blame as the woman who deluded him, thinking him a gentleman, which he is, and having money, which he has not." What would Ralph Denham say to this? Thought Katharine, beginning to pace up and down her bedroom. She twitched aside the curtains, so that, on turning, she was faced by darkness, and looking out could just distinguish the branches of a plane tree and the yellow lights of someone else's windows. What would Mary dash the thoroughfares was admitted to the room. The incessant and tumultuous hum of the distant traffic seemed, as she stood there, to represent the thick texture of her life, for her life was so hemmed in with the progress of other lives that the sound of its own advance was inaudible. Men and women, this life made up of the dense crossings and entanglements of men and women, had no existence whatever. Even now, alone, at night, looking out into the shapeless mass of London, fellow beings, she concluded, and shut the window with a sigh, and returned once more to her letters. She could not doubt but that William's letter was the most genuine she had yet received from him. He had come to the conclusion that he could not live without her, he wrote. He believed that he knew her and could give her happiness, and that their marriage would be unlike other marriages.